First of all, thank you to Jane for the wonderful opportunity to be here. It's a wonderful pleasure. Thank you very much, Jane. A bit about myself. I am a self-advocate living with Asperger's syndrome. For those who might not be familiar, it is the most mild form of autism. So I just got a tiny bit of autism. And I have overcome tremendous hardships. As Jane has mentioned, I'm a former participant of this program. In fact, I was in the program for 3 years, and I graduated recently this past June. I'm presently working at the Geneva Center for Autism, which is in Toronto, and I'm also starting an autism consulting business that's in process. Here are some of the challenges I experienced growing up with Asperger's. I had the following challenges: social communication and interaction, making and keeping friends, dating and relationships, adapting to changes in routine. Learning was a particular challenge. That's something I struggled with since I was 4, or since junior kindergarten. Something that I really overcame, and I'll talk more about my successes with learning later. Finally, managing anxiety or coping with anxiety was a particular challenge for me. I've learned a lot of strategies over the years and has also used medication that helps me. And now I'm, as you can see, very relaxed. The hardest part is just before the speech, right? As a result of society's intolerance for people with significant differences, I experienced teasing, bullying, and even harsh or impatient responses from adults, including teachers. Not all teachers are very nice, but most are. However, these experiences did not discourage me from working hard and, most importantly, persevering. Speaking of perseverance, here are my experiences in college and university. As you can see, I obtained undergraduate degrees, first from Centennial College. I got a developmental services worker to work with people with developmental disabilities, including autism, way back in the year 2000. I'm older than I look. And then I went back and got a Bachelor of Arts in History. And a little bit later, I went back and got my master's in critical disability studies, which I am extremely proud that I graduated this past June. It was a really tough 4 years, but I made it with a straight A average. My success in getting a straight A average was not only due to hard work, but also, most importantly, from the wonderful assistance I got from counseling and disability services here at York and at Centennial College. They have wonderful accommodation there as well. And I received a lot of help. Some of the accommodations I received and that I would recommend for people with disabilities or learning challenges include extra time, such as for exams and essays, a private room, if necessary, that's what I needed, and a computer. So how awesome is that? A reduced course load, and finally, the bursary for students with disabilities, which will even provide a free laptop, or they'll give funding for a laptop. Actually, this laptop right here was provided by the Bursary for Students with Disabilities, the BSWD, and funding for tutoring and any other kind of technology or services that are available that can assist with learning are usually provided under that bursary. Let me tell you a bit about my experiences in the labor market. Starting in my late teens, I worked mainly in restaurants. And that's because I absolutely loved the restaurant environment. I'm a huge people person, a social butterfly, and I thought it would be fun to work in restaurants where I would get to interact with many guests and so on. Unfortunately, I struggled tremendously with the pace of work. That's as a result of having trouble with short-term memory, working memory, and multitasking. And unfortunately, I ended up getting fired. However, I was not aware of my right to workplace accommodation. I didn't even know about the existence of workplace accommodation. I thought you just have to, work as fast as you can, and I didn't know about accommodation legislation. This realization about accommodation or workplace accommodation, I realized during my late 20s and early 30s. This mainly occurred when I was working with people with disabilities as a support worker, and I had a very empathetic and kind employer who, rather than firing me, I decided to offer some assistance. And I realized, that he said we could accommodate you because I was working at a organization for people with disabilities, and he said, this is what we do, we help people. So that was an important moment for me. Another turning point for me was in this very room in the career mentorship program, which I've taken for 3 years. Another important aspect of the career mentorship program was my mentor, Lisa Allen, who unfortunately is not here today, and which is a little quite disappointing. She was my mentor actually for 3 years during the mentorship, during my 3 years in the program, because I decided that I wanted to continue with her every year, and I learned a tremendous amount from her. As some of you may know from who have met her, Lisa works at OCAD University and is a learning strategist. So she is tremendously talented at strategies for just about everything. And I also learned a great deal about resources and all kinds of things that will be significantly helpful for my career and for life in general. The following accommodations are recommended for people with autism or Asperger's, but are also helpful for people with learning challenges in general. So they include extra time to get acquainted, instructions in writing. For people like me, when I was working in the workplace, because I have trouble with working memory, that means someone would give me instructions and say, I want you to go downstairs or go down the hall and get this, this, and this, and that. And then I would go on my way and say, sorry, I missed that. What was that? Or, it's like being given directions. I had that problem too, and I would forget part of the directions. So being able to write things down or asking my employer to write that down for me rather than being given verbal directions that I'm likely going to forget. Permission not to multitask, and that's an accommodation that has been provided for me. Having a private office is helpful for individuals who have difficulties in a noisy environment. So, many office spaces have cubicles where, it's an open concept and it could be a noisy environment. It could be like 50 or 100 people working in the same room. There's the option of being allowed to work in a separate office. And finally, having access to a mentor or coach at the job location is another option available as well. Though living with Asperger's can be difficult at times, there are, of course, benefits, as you see I have emphasized in green. I discovered these benefits through reading autobiographies of highly successful people with autism or Asperger's. Here are a few people with autism or Asperger's who have personally inspired me. One person who has had a significant impact on me is someone who a few of you have heard of, Temple Grandin. And she writes about unique thinking abilities and talents among people on the autism spectrum, and she encourages channeling these talents to the labor market. Another individual is Stephen Shore, who has Asperger's. He is a professor in the United States, and most of his research and writings emphasize about self-advocacy and disclosure. And I have included some of his work on self-advocacy in my own research. John Elder Robeson is an author with Asperger's who talks about unique insight among people with Asperger's. Donna Williams is an author and an artist and a blogger with autism. And finally, Daniel Tammet is an author with Asperger's who has what is known as savant skills. So for those who have seen the movie Rain Man, have any of you seen the movie? He is similar to Rain Man in terms of his memory, and he has broken the European record for pi, which is a math concept that I'm not very familiar with, but he broke the European record, and there was a documentary made about him. So this is Temple Grandin at a recent autism conference doing a book signing, and that's me, of course. She has had the most profound impact on me in changing my perspectives on living with Asperger's. As you can see, I met her. Most powerful for me was her presentation entitled "Different Kinds of Minds Contribute to Society." She also emphasizes a metaphor for career opportunities being everywhere. And she uses the open door metaphor. So she uses the metaphor of an open door to emphasize that career opportunities are everywhere, but we just have to keep looking around. You know, there's an open door there and there's an open door there. So we have to keep on looking or ask other people to look for us. But as she says, the doors don't stay open long. So though opportunities are easy to miss, the secret is to constantly and carefully look for those open doors. And you can see they're all over the place. Thank you very much.